Diplomatic missions, negotiation tactics, and international relations. The Master Diplomat. In the Imperial diplomatic chambers of Tenochtitlan, where carefully orchestrated negotiations determined the fate of entire regions and skilled ambassadors transformed potential military conflicts into profitable alliances through strategic communication and psychological manipulation, Tlacaelel Itztli, the most experienced diplomatic coordinator in the Triple Alliance, prepared briefing materials for 3 simultaneous embassy missions that would test the Empire's ability to maintain territorial expansion through negotiation rather than warfare, understanding that authentic imperial power required not merely military dominance, but sophisticated diplomatic capability that could achieve strategic objectives through careful persuasion, economic incentives, and political maneuvering, serving both immediate tactical goals and long-term imperial stability. The morning intelligence briefing revealed complex challenges facing imperial diplomacy across multiple regions. The Huaxtec city-states along the Gulf Coast were showing signs of coordinated resistance to increased tribute demands, while the Mixtec kingdoms in the southern mountains had formed a defensive alliance that threatened imperial trade routes to the Pacific territories. Most concerning, intelligence reports suggested that Tlacaelel diplomats were actively recruiting anti-Aztec coalitions among traditionally neutral communities. The Huaxtec situation requires immediate attention, Tlacaelel announced to his team of diplomatic specialists during the strategy session. Their resistance appears coordinated rather than spontaneous, suggesting external influence or sophisticated internal leadership that we've previously underestimated. Our embassy mission must determine whether negotiated settlement remains possible or whether military intervention has become inevitable. This assessment reflected the sophisticated intelligence analysis that supported Aztec diplomatic operations. Successful ambassadors needed detailed understanding of target communities' internal politics, economic conditions, military capabilities, and cultural sensitivities that influenced their responses to imperial pressure or inducements. The Huaxtec mission required selecting diplomatic personnel with appropriate language skills, cultural knowledge, and negotiation experience for dealing with coastal communities whose traditions differed significantly from highland Aztec practices. The ambassador's personal background could significantly influence negotiation outcomes, making personnel selection as important as tactical planning. Xochitl has extensive experience with coastal diplomacy and speaks fluent Huaxtec, in addition to maintaining family connections through marriage alliances, reported Xochitl, the specialist responsible for diplomatic personnel management. However, her previous negotiations resulted in reduced tribute quotas that some officials consider excessive concessions to regional autonomy. This personnel evaluation demonstrated how diplomatic effectiveness required balancing multiple considerations, including technical competence, cultural compatibility, negotiation philosophy, and political reliability. Ambassadors wielded substantial authority in their negotiations, making their personal judgment and loyalty crucial factors in mission success. The strategic objectives for the Huaxtec mission extended beyond simple tribute collection to encompass broader questions of imperial authority and regional stability. The coastal communities controlled valuable resources including cotton, cacao, exotic feathers, and marine products, while occupying strategic positions along trade routes, connecting highland territories with distant markets. Their cooperation was essential for imperial economic health, but their resistance threatened to encourage similar defiance throughout the empire. The Huaxtec negotiation must achieve tribute compliance while preserving economic relationships and demonstrating imperial authority without provoking military resistance that could spread to neighboring regions. outlined Nakali, who specialized in strategic planning for diplomatic missions. We need to identify pressure points that motivate cooperation while offering inducements that justify submission to local populations. Such strategic analysis required understanding complex interactions between economic interests, political calculations, and cultural values that influenced community decision-making processes. Effective diplomacy demanded systematic preparation that anticipated various scenarios while maintaining flexibility for adapting to unexpected developments. The Mixtec diplomatic challenge involved more complex negotiations with multiple independent kingdoms whose sophisticated political traditions included their own diplomatic protocols and alliance systems. These communities possessed military capabilities that could resist imperial pressure while maintaining economic relationships with other regional powers that reduced their dependence on Aztec trade networks. The Mixtec mission required assembling a delegation that could demonstrate appropriate respect for local customs while projecting imperial authority sufficient to encourage serious negotiations rather than dismissive rejection of Aztec proposals. The embassy would include cultural specialists, military advisors, and economic analysts capable of conducting multifaceted negotiations, addressing security concerns, trade relationships, and political recognition issues. The Mixtec kingdoms respect military strength but value diplomatic sophistication, observed Citlali, a specialist in mountain region diplomacy who had conducted successful negotiations with Zapotec communities. Our delegation must demonstrate both capabilities while offering concrete benefits that justify accepting tributary status rather than maintaining expensive independence. This cultural analysis reflected the sophisticated understanding of regional differences that characterized effective Aztec diplomacy. Different communities responded to different forms of persuasion, requiring diplomatic strategies tailored to specific cultural contexts and political circumstances. The embassy preparations included assembling appropriate gifts that would demonstrate imperial wealth and respect for local traditions, while avoiding presentations that might be interpreted as either insulting inadequacy or threatening displays of superior resources. Gift selection required detailed knowledge of recipient cultures and careful calculation of symbolic messages being conveyed. The Mixtec presentation will include jade ornaments crafted by our finest artisans, tropical bird feathers arranged according to their traditional design preferences, and cotton textiles woven with patterns that acknowledge their artistic achievements while demonstrating our own capabilities, explained Melintica, who managed ceremonial aspects of diplomatic missions. The gifts must show respect without appearing submissive, and wealth without seeming provocative. Such attention to symbolic communication reflected understanding that diplomatic success often depended on psychological and cultural factors as much as political or economic considerations. Appropriate ceremonial behavior could create positive atmospheres for productive negotiations, while cultural insensitivity could doom missions regardless of their substantive merit. The intelligence networks that supported diplomatic operations required coordination with merchant communities, traveling artisans, and religious personnel who moved freely across territorial boundaries while observing political, military, and economic conditions in target regions. This intelligence gathering enabled diplomatic missions to arrive with detailed understanding of local circumstances and negotiation opportunities. The Poctica merchant networks provided particularly valuable intelligence through their regular trading activities that brought them into contact with community leaders, military officials, and ordinary citizens whose conversations revealed important information about political attitudes, economic conditions, and potential diplomatic leverage points. Recent Poctica reports indicate growing tensions within the Mixtec alliance over tribute distribution and military obligations, reported Itzpapalotl, who coordinated intelligence operations supporting diplomatic activities. Two kingdoms are questioning whether alliance benefits justify their defense commitments, creating potential opportunities for separate negotiations that could divide their coalition. This intelligence analysis demonstrated how diplomatic operations could exploit internal divisions within enemy alliances while identifying negotiation opportunities that might not be apparent from external observation alone. The timing considerations for diplomatic missions required coordination with agricultural cycles, religious calendars, and political events that affected target communities' receptivity to negotiations. Diplomatic initiatives launched during inappropriate periods could face rejection regardless of their substantive merit, while well-timed missions might achieve surprising success through favorable circumstances. The Mixtec mission should depart immediately after their harvest festivals, when community leaders will be available for extended negotiations and populations will be celebrating abundance that makes tribute obligations seem more manageable, advised Tlacaelel based on his analysis of regional political patterns. However, we must avoid their religious mourning periods when negotiations with outsiders are considered spiritually inappropriate. Such scheduling considerations required detailed knowledge of target cultures combined with strategic thinking about optimal conditions for successful diplomatic engagement. The negotiation preparation involved developing multiple scenarios with corresponding strategic responses that would enable ambassadors to adapt their approaches based on the reception they encountered and the bargaining positions revealed during initial discussions. Diplomatic flexibility required systematic preparation rather than improvisation under pressure. Primary negotiation scenario assumes Mixtec willingness to discuss tributary arrangements in exchange for guaranteed autonomy in internal affairs and reduced military obligations, outlined Nikali during mission briefing preparations. Alternative approaches include mutual defense treaties, exclusive trading agreements, or graduated tributary schedules that recognize different kingdoms' varying capabilities and circumstances. This scenario planning reflected sophisticated understanding of negotiation dynamics and the importance of maintaining multiple options during complex diplomatic discussions involving various stakeholders with different interests and priorities. The psychological aspects of diplomatic negotiation required understanding how cultural differences affected communication styles, decision-making processes, and authority structures that influenced how target communities evaluated proposals and reached agreements. Effective ambassadors needed cultural sensitivity combined with strategic thinking about human motivation and group dynamics. Mixtec decision-making involves extended consultation among nobles, priests, and community representatives that can continue for weeks before reaching conclusions, explained Citlali based on her previous experience in the region. Our negotiators must demonstrate patience while maintaining pressure for eventual decisions rather than indefinite delays that could be used to organize resistance. This cultural intelligence enabled diplomatic missions to adapt their approaches to local customs while pursuing their strategic objectives through culturally appropriate methods that respected local traditions while achieving imperial goals. The economic aspects of diplomatic negotiations required detailed understanding of target communities' resource needs, production capabilities, and trade relationships that could be leveraged to create mutually beneficial arrangements or to apply economic pressure that encouraged political cooperation. The Mixtec regions produced valuable craft goods, precious metals, and specialized agricultural products that commanded high prices in imperial markets, while requiring imported materials and finished goods that Aztec territories could supply through expanded trade relationships. Identifying these economic interdependencies enabled diplomatic missions to propose arrangements that provided concrete benefits to target communities. Economic analysis indicates that Mixtec kingdoms could increase their prosperity by 20 to 30% through expanded trade access to imperial markets, reported Tlacaelel, an economic specialist who supported diplomatic missions with detailed trade analysis. However, they fear that economic dependence could lead to political subordination that would compromise their traditional autonomy. This economic intelligence revealed both opportunities and challenges for diplomatic negotiations, while suggesting strategies for addressing target communities' concerns about maintaining political independence despite economic integration. The military considerations affecting diplomatic missions included assessment of imperial military capabilities relative to target communities' defensive resources, while developing negotiation positions that balanced deterrent threats with reassuring guarantees about the consequences of cooperation versus resistance. Current military assessment indicates that Imperial forces could defeat Mixtec alliance through sustained campaign lasting 6 to 8 months, but casualties would be substantial and costs would exceed probable economic benefits from conquest, analyzed Yautl, who coordinated military intelligence supporting diplomatic operations. Negotiated settlement offering favorable terms justifies accepting reduced territorial control in exchange for avoiding military costs. This military analysis provided realistic frameworks for diplomatic negotiations while ensuring that ambassadors understood both the strengths and limitations of military options that supported their diplomatic initiatives. The regional stability implications of diplomatic missions extended beyond immediate negotiation objectives to encompass broader questions about imperial expansion strategies and long-term territorial administration that affected how negotiated agreements would be implemented and maintained over time. Successful diplomatic agreements required not just initial acceptance, but also sustainable implementation that could withstand changing political circumstances and evolving community interests. This sustainability demanded attention to enforcement mechanisms, review procedures, and adaptation processes that could maintain negotiated relationships through various challenges. Sustainable diplomatic agreements require building local stakeholder support beyond formal leadership approval, observed Tlacaelel during mission planning discussions. Trade benefits, political recognition, and cultural respect must create constituencies that support continued cooperation even when leadership changes or circumstances evolve. This long-term perspective distinguished effective diplomatic strategy from simple short-term negotiation tactics while ensuring that diplomatic achievements contributed to lasting imperial stability rather than temporary tactical advantages. The cultural exchange components of diplomatic missions included opportunities for enhancing mutual understanding through shared ceremonies, artistic presentations, and educational discussions that could reduce cultural barriers while building personal relationships between imperial representatives and local leaders. These cultural activities served both diplomatic and intelligence functions by creating informal communication opportunities while demonstrating imperial sophistication and respect for local traditions that could influence attitudes toward broader political relationships. Cultural exchange programming will include joint astronomical observations that demonstrate shared intellectual interests, artistic presentations featuring both imperial and local traditional performances, and ceremonial meals prepared according to fusion recipes that honor both culinary traditions, planned milentica for the upcoming missions. These activities create positive personal experiences that support formal negotiation objectives. Such cultural programming required significant preparation and resources, but could generate goodwill that facilitated successful negotiations while creating lasting positive impressions that supported ongoing diplomatic relationships. As the 3 diplomatic missions prepared to depart for their respective destinations, Tlacaelel reviewed the comprehensive strategies that would guide their negotiations while recognizing that successful diplomacy required combining systematic preparation with adaptive flexibility that could respond to unexpected opportunities and challenges. The Huaxtec mission would test the Empire's ability to resolve resistance through negotiation rather than military action, demonstrating whether diplomatic incentives could restore cooperation while maintaining imperial authority. The Mixtec mission would explore possibilities for creating new alliance relationships that could expand imperial influence without direct conquest. The Counter-Tlacaelel initiative would challenge enemy diplomatic efforts while strengthening imperial coalition networks. These simultaneous diplomatic initiatives represented the sophisticated approach to international relations that enabled the Aztec Empire to maintain influence across vast territories through strategic combination of military capability, economic leverage, and skilled negotiation that achieved imperial objectives while respecting local autonomy and cultural diversity where possible. The master diplomats who coordinated these complex international relationships served as essential architects of imperial policy, whose professional expertise enabled the empire to achieve strategic goals through peaceful means when possible, while maintaining the military options necessary for defending imperial interests when diplomacy failed to achieve required results. Through careful attention to cultural sensitivities, strategic planning, intelligence gathering, and adaptive negotiation tactics, diplomatic missions created opportunities for resolving conflicts and building relationships that served both imperial expansion and regional stability. Their success enabled the empire to achieve influence through persuasion and mutual benefit, rather than relying exclusively on military conquest and administrative coercion. The diplomatic missions of the Aztec Empire represented sophisticated integration of political strategy, cultural understanding, and international relations that enabled complex civilization to maintain influence across diverse territories through systematic attention to negotiation skills, relationship building, and strategic communication that served both immediate tactical objectives and long-term imperial stability through peaceful expansion when possible and effective resistance when necessary. The negotiations would test the empire's diplomatic capabilities while demonstrating that authentic imperial power required not just military strength, but also sophisticated understanding of human psychology, cultural diversity, and strategic communication that could achieve political objectives through skilled persuasion and mutually beneficial arrangements that respected local interests while advancing imperial goals through peaceful means wherever possible.